Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another episode of the Truish Hoops podcast. We're back, and of course, with a new NBA season, we had to bring back James Boisits. How's it going?
It's going good, man. Good to talk to you. You obviously are jumping in your seat, ready to go for tonight, aren't you?
Yes.
It's been a
Hopefully-
while since my opening day has truly mattered. It's been like a few, it's been a few years. I actually was at the last one that truly mattered, and it was a debacle. But, want to
Which
talk
one
about
was
my
which one
team.
was that?
It was Nets, Pelicans, Ingram's. It was the year where everybody requested trades and came back, and
Mm.
then it was a 20-point blowout, and Steve Nash was fired a week later, and it
Wow.
was
Wow.
that was I tell you what though, something that was impressive that game was Zion Williamson, and we could be getting hopefully a good Zion Williamson season this year with all the weight he's dropped. But we're here to talk about questions here,
Hmm.
right? Biggest questions we have coming up to this season, Dan. And I got a few. I even got a couple wild cards, but I think we have three each, right?
Yep.
So let's roll.
I guess one that really, since we talked about our questions, one overlapped the Eastern Conference, right?
Yeah.
Who is the best team in the Eastern Conference? I have an obvious answer, of course. Maybe you have a different answer. Um, but I think it's going to be a two-team race for the most part. I
Mhm.
saw ESPN, all their experts are either picking the Cavaliers or the New York Knicks.
I agree, but I have a wild card, but go ahead.
So obviously, I'm going to go with the New York Knicks. I think this is probably the most highly anticipated season of my lifetime. I don't think that's too hyperbolic to say, given we made our first Eastern Conference Finals last season in 20 years, and then we fired Tibbs, which was kind of, I wouldn't say polarizing, but I think a lot of fans were happy to see him go because, there's been kind of a ongoing commentary for the past couple of years of his shortcomings and what we don't like about him. And then you now get him fired, and then all of a sudden the media liked Tibbs. It was kind of weird. But we bring in Mike Brown, who's a former coach of the year, saying all the right things, wants to increase the pace, wants to increase the space, wants us to play faster and with some more intensity. And then, of course, you have new roster additions from last season now going into their second year: Michael Bridges, Carl Anthony Towns. And then you bring in all these guys to revamp the bench, which was probably our biggest issue last season, on top of the things you could critique on offense and defense. Bring in Yabu Salev, who was a 76er last year, Frenchman. And then you bring Jordan Clarkson, who was basically a better version of Campaign, a little more offensively skilled, bigger, but still some of the same characteristics of being like kind of a wild card offensive talent. And so you hope all those things, this team finally being deeper, the injuries, unfortunately, to Jason Tatum and Tyrese Halliburton kind of leaves this conference wide open to now the two teams out of the top three that are left, which is the Cavaliers and the Knicks. And I think with all the things having changed over these past 2 years, it's really coming to a boiling point is, can this Knicks team get it done? Can we finally get over the hump? This has been a slow process for the past 5 years of this team really rebuilding its image, signing Brunson, which ended up being a monumental signing in New York Knicks history. I mean, no one really saw it coming. Leon Rose probably thinks he saw it coming, but I mean, to this extent, Jalen Brunson being an MVP caliber talent, I don't think anyone really saw that happening. And then trading Randall and finally getting Cat, and Cat's been great. And then the big trade for Michael, OG. Everything's been done. The decisions have been made. There's really no big decision left that the Knicks can really make. This is the team. This is the team to get it done. And this is probably the best chance they will have in the tenure of this core to finally make the finals and win a title.
I agree 100% that this is the biggest, probably the most pressurized New York Knicks season since Patrick Ewing when Jordan retired, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no excuse to not make the finals, which is really hard to put on a first. It's thankful he's obviously a veteran head coach. Could you imagine if they hired someone with no head coaching experience, like to just kind
Right.
of jump
Yeah.
into this? I mean, there were like rumors that, there would be some candidates like that. Obviously, Jason Kidd was the one they really wanted, right?
Yeah,
Listen,
I mean
man.
they had a wide search. They were kind of asking whoever.
Yeah.
Even Don Staley from South Carolina got an interview as well.
I'm going to be consistent in what I have said about this team for 2 years. I have the Cleveland Cavaliers coming out of the East and as the best team in the Eastern Conference. I think they were ravaged with injuries in the postseason last year. I believe Kenny Atkinson is a better coach than Mike Brown. I understand the history of the Cleveland Cavaliers in the playoffs. I understand the history specifically against the Knicks, although I think that series is kind of irrelevant. Kind of irrelevant, not fully irrelevant, kind of, because you have two different coaches now in that series. I think a big reason, actually, why the Knicks won those series was because of Tom Thibodeau and the kind of the grit that the Knicks had in those series. Mitchell Robinson also, as I am getting a text, so I hope you didn't hear that. But I will say the thing is with this Knicks team is I think they are way too small, specifically on the bench. I think their depth is improved, but not necessarily great. I think that's fair to say. Yabusele, I like, right? Jordan Clarkson, I think I was a avid believer in the Knicks bringing him in, being a microwave scorer off the bench. This is not six man of the year Jordan Clarkson though from a few years ago. I know a lot of Knicks fans don't watch the Utah Jazz, so they should know that.
Who does, to be
Yeah,
honest?
exactly. Who does? To be fair. Um, but I was having actually a thought yesterday in the shower. I was like, should I go with the Knicks to come out of the East? Because you know what? I've doubted this team for a few years now, and like Jalen Brunson always seems to kind of prove me wrong, right? Like Brunson, he obviously had that game winner versus the Pistons last year. He's a guy that I could totally see leading a team to the NBA Finals. And to be honest, Donovan Mitchell, he's been on the Utah Jazz, he's been on one seed Jazz teams, he's on a one seed Cleveland team. And it's like they did lose to the defending Eastern Conference champion, and they were, some people argue, a torn Achilles away from winning the whole thing. And the Knicks also lost to that team. So it's important to note that. But I look at the I just thought the Knicks got so lucky last year in the playoffs in regards to that Celtics series. That was the dumbest series I have ever seen a basketball team play. I I saw it as a fluke, and I'm just gonna say it. I just not necessarily the series against Indiana, not necessarily the series against Detroit. I watched a lot of Knicks basketball last season. That team looked out of sync a lot of the year. You can blame Tibbs for that. You could blame new players for that. I blame the fact that they overrated Mikal Bridges and his performance did not live up to that trade last season. The hope is that Mike Brown is going to fix everything offensively with Mikal Bridges. I've seen Mikal Bridges play for a few coaches now, including the coach that he was going off with, Jacques Vaughn. And I didn't think Jacques Vaughn was a good coach. I'm just saying, like, I've seen Mikal Bridges play basketball for a few years now, and to me, last year was the Mikal Bridges that I see, and I think we're gonna get the same thing. I think we're gonna get the exact same thing. He may get more offensive touches, he may get more explosive games, but I just feel like, you know, this team, you know, last season to me, that Celtics series was so fortunate for them in those first two games. In game three, they went back to the Garden, they got blown the hell out, and then once Tatum got hurt, I'm not saying that's why they won the series. I think the Boston Celtics stupidity is why they lost the series. And if you're the Knicks, there's nothing you can do about that. I'm just saying, I think the Knicks are the sexy pick to go to the finals. They're like, oh, it feels good going down. I love it. They're like, it's like junk food. Like, you really like the idea of the Knicks being in the finals. it's especially after a Pacers Thunder series, and no one wants a Thunder Cavs or a Nuggets Cavs NBA Finals with no LeBron James. Like I get it, but I just think new coach, a lot of pressure this year. The fact that they were durable in the playoffs last season, like guys didn't get hurt, and there's guys on this roster that get injured. Like OG Anunoby. Brunson has had some injuries, but he's usually pretty good in the postseason. And Cat, he's had his fair share of injuries. Mitchell Robinson, you're already hearing stuff about him right now, and they need him. So there's just a lot of concerns I have, and what really pushed it over the edge to me was because I really did consider the Knicks as a team to make the finals this year. In fact, maybe even win it. Like if the Knicks go to the finals, I think they're home court. Because if the Knicks go to the finals, that proves to me they're by far the best team in the Eastern Conference, right? And their home court advantage is going to be tough, and they always beat Denver. It looks like they play really well against them. So if they face Denver, I mean, I probably would take the Knicks in that series with the home court advantage that they have. But there was a lot of things, and they have to make it to the finals this year. And if you don't make it to the finals, where do you go from there? Because it's like next year, the Celtics are going to be back, the Pacers are going to be back, Orlando will probably be better. I don't know what's going to happen with Atlanta this year. The East is going to get better. So, because the East really can't get much worse. So, I know you don't want to hear it. I get it. I know you don't
No,
want to hear
no,
it.
you make some good points. There's definitely a lot has to go right, of course, for any team to make a great run, to the finals, to the championship. Look at Milwaukee, right? They had one, we look back at the year because it's weird,
Mm-hmm.
um, that they've
Let,
had
let,
so
let me
much.
just say to Nick fans listening to me right now, I thought the Dallas Mavericks were not going to make the playoffs the year they made the finals. So I don't know what I'm talking about. So,
It's a
you know, you
great
you
caveat.
you have you have something to think about, like, oh, he's just a Nets fan that's upset. Um, you
No,
know,
but you do make some points. I think Cleveland, obviously, when you look at their roster, they are built to be an elite team. And we remember last year they started the season 15-0, end up winning 64 games, most successful season they've had without LeBron James on the roster. They flame out in the playoffs partly because of injury, partly because the Pacers were just on one, obviously, and I saw that firsthand. Um, how good that team was and how crazy Halliburton's run to the finals was. Those are the two teams. I think Orlando. Some people
yeah,
like
that's my wild card
Orlando,
team right there.
and they
It's
look really
Orlando.
and they look really good on paper. They looked really good in the preseason. As far as you want to look into preseason basketball,
Yeah,
um, the addition of Desmond Bain really makes them a more dynamic offensive team. And of course,
yeah,
Paolo and Franz are still coming into their own as superstars in this league. So that's obviously going to be a team in the mix as well, for sure. Because if they were a great defensive team last year, if they can just up their offense and their shooting, they're right there. If they stay healthy, of course, they'll be in the mix as well.
yeah.
I really like Cleveland's signing Lonzo Ball. I think he's going to be
I
a
like it too.
really big factor if he can stay healthy
Yeah.
throughout the season and
Hmm.
kind of give an alternative playmaker to Garland.
Yeah.
And you could take advantage of Garland being more of a scorer as well as just being a playmaker when you have Ball in there because he can play defense and he can facilitate very well. And of course, Evan Mobley,
Hmm.
he's getting better and better every year. Was Defensive Player of the Year
Weird,
last
weird,
year.
weird comments from Evan Mobley recently. I don't know if you saw that.
I actually have not.
He said something about I'm paraphrasing, but he basically was kind of questioning, not possibly not getting the ball in the postseason last year,
Oh boy.
which had me worried. And that's why I was thinking about the Knicks. But I just I just think that Mikal Bridges trade, man. I really do think that was a big mistake by them. And I'm just going to continue to say it until they make the finals. Because I said it when we did a pod to talk about that. If they make the finals, they don't even have to win it. I was like, if they make the finals, then Mikal Bridges trade is a win. So I'm going to continue to say it until it happens. And I was just a firm believer that, all right, cool. He came up big in the postseason. He also stunk for most of the games and then would get the big steal. Great. I don't know if that's worth your whole future, especially when Giannis wanted to go to your team this summer and you weren't able to put up a package because you traded for this guy. So that's just my thoughts. I will say they have Cleveland's number. I think a Nick fan is not scared of Cleveland. And they were terrified of Boston and they got it done. I don't think
Right.
Jalen Brunson's scared of Cleveland. In fact, I think Brunson's gonna have a field day against that backcourt. Um, when it comes to the Mike Brown decision, I see it because you're basically hoping he can do what he did with Sacramento with Fox and Sabonis with two better players with Brunson and
Hmm.
Cat. I think Cat's comments the other day about what position his role on the
Yeah,
team and
what
his
his role is
position
gonna
was kind of weird. Um, I don't really know what that means. I'm not gonna look too much into it. Um,
I think that's just honestly, it's just the fact of the matter. Cat last year was new to the team and kind of had to figure stuff out,
yeah.
and was able to had a great year. And then just now his second year with the team, you think there'd be some a little more familiarity, and there is, I guess, to the playing with the core of Brunson, OG, and Michael. But now he's got to learn some new things as well
Hmm.
under Mike Brown's system. And like you mentioned, Sabonis, I think he wants to implement some of those offensive sets and stuff that he would run with Cat, having Cat being sort of a hub and being because he's I think a pretty good passer for a big.
Yeah.
He's not Jokic level, obviously, or even Sabonis, but bringing Jalen Brunson off ball has been a major focal point because I think that's one of the biggest obvious criticisms of Tibbs' offense was that it was too heliocentric to Jalen Brunson. And like Jalen Brunson, as great as he is, cannot shoulder the entire offensive weight of a team, and he shouldn't have to with how much offensive talent there is on this team. So I think he's going to have to, it's going to be an adjustment period for everybody because even in the preseason, there were times where it looked kind of clunky, people not really knowing, hesitant where they should be on offense. And I think that's just something the Knicks are going to have to deal with. And that's luckily, that's why we play 82 games. They have the whole season to figure this out. As long as they get to the end of the season healthy, they're going to be top two, top three, at least in the East record wise. I think all those things will work out. I think Cat's just, just thinking out loud, talking about what his role is going to be. I think he'll figure it out. He's a great player and he's skilled. He'll figure it out.
What'd you think of Matt Barnes' comments about Mike Brown?
Um, Mike Brown, obviously, he's had a long NBA career. He's been in some good situations, coached LeBron and Cat in the Cavs first stint. Um, and had that really bad, really short tenure with the Lakers. I don't think Matt Barnes is, out of line. He's speaking from his experience of what he's known of Mike Brown. But Mike Brown's been in this league a long time. I think that time he spent as an assistant in Golden State really helped him and changed his outlook and his strategies because he used to be known as just a defensive coach
Yeah.
back in the day, and that's why those Cavs teams um, defensively were really good.
Mhm.
And just offensively, it was just all LeBron. But and then the Lakers, were kind of a mess with their roster, the Nash, Dwight Howard stuff, Kobe later in his career. That obviously didn't work out. But he goes to Sacramento with a roster that's not, doesn't jump off the page, and he was able to take them to a really good season. And of course, obviously, it hasn't really worked out, and the Kings are kind of in a weird spot now. Uh, but I think that experience post, that Laker tenure, which is what Matt Barnes mostly is talking about, um, I think it's made him a better coach, and I think his personality, I think, fits this team more um, than Tibbs's rigid style and kind of not really willing to bend. Mike Brown's kind of like a player's coach, and I think that really mends with the kind
Well,
of guys that we
Mikal
have.
Bridges apparently needs that.
I think Michael Bridges hated Tibbs, honestly. I think him and Deuce McBride really did not like Tibbs,
Wow.
and they didn't. And you could see if you look back at some of the things
You
they
know who
said.
didn't hate Tibbs? Dante DiVincenzo.
Josh Hart and I think Jalen Brunson are also big Tibbs guys,
Yeah.
obviously. I
Their
mean, why?
best player loved the coach,
I mean,
which
what?
is a
What?
big reason why. Here's the thing. I don't mean to cut you off. It's just I
No,
disagree
I'm
with the
good.
point of I just thought Tibbs's identity with the Knicks was crucial. I really did. And I understand the offense. The offense was pretty good last year. Actually, the issue with the team was the defense. And they didn't really seem connected. And obviously, the injuries that they suffered in the postseason a few years ago, that's going to fall on Tibbs because the amount of minutes they play. I think when I talked about durability earlier, Mike Brown's not playing these guys 40 minutes. He's not going to do
Yeah.
that. And that'll help. These guys aren't going to be so beat up by the postseason, and I think that's important because you know what? The healthiest team we have seen, my Brooklyn Nets included, the healthiest team makes the finals, right? The Indiana Pacers were healthy. They were deep. They made it to the finals. Oklahoma City, healthy, deep, made it to the finals. Chet Holmgren plays like 20 games like every regular season, and it doesn't
Yeah.
matter because he made
Yeah.
nobody talks about it.
He made it to the postseason and
Nobody
he was
talks
very
about
good.
it.
Yeah.
Nobody talks about it. So that's very important. Um, I just thought Tibbs was super important to that team and the identity. We're going to see with Mike Brown if that's different. I agree with you. But listen, the big question I have is how's Mike Brown going to do without having the best coach in New York not by his side in Jordy Fernandez?
Hey, Jordy Fernandez so far has proven to be a good coach for whatever situation the Nets
I
are
tell
going
you
through
what,
right now.
I would have the Knicks in the finals. I would have the Knicks winning the championship if Jordy Fernandez was the coach. I'm dead set.
That's some
And I
high
don't I don't
praise.
want to bring my team into it too much. But that is he was on the staff of those Sacramento Kings, and I spoke to Kings fans on Twitter.
Hmm.
When Jordy Fernandez left, they were devastated. They were really upset about it.
Hmm.
And Mike Brown gets fired like the first month of the season in Sacramento. Don't mean to scare anybody. I'm just saying. I'm not saying Mike Brown didn't deserve his Coach of the Year or anything like that. I think the
Yeah,
Sacramento
yeah,
situation's a mess. I think there's a lot of reasons to why that didn't work out. I'm just saying that is a fact.
yeah. Just a
Jordan Fernandez was on that staff.
last note. I think you're right. I'm forever grateful for Tibbs and what he did to help revive this franchise. I mean, we lived through some really tough years at the end of the Melo tenure and the few
Mhm.
years in between before we signed Randall and then eventually Brunson. He did mold this Knicks team to his style, to his personality, and that worked for a
Yeah.
long time. And I think just the changes they made, partly because they kind of had to when they lost Hartenstein for through no fault of their own, they couldn't offer him
Yeah.
as much money through the CBA as Oklahoma City. They were kind of forced to, not forced, but encouraged to make changes in a Eastern Conference that looked very open. And in those changes, you kind of changed much of the personality of the team. It's no longer this hard-nosed defensive, we're going to kill you physically and kill you on the boards. It's not really what they are anymore. Mitchell Robinson obviously is still a great offensive rebounder, and he's going to be crucial, which is why they're trying to load manage him to get him through the year. Um, but we're now kind of an offensive finesse kind of team. That's kind of the guys that we have. So Tibbs, I feel like no longer kind of fit that, and that's why his style looked like it just didn't work with the personnel on the team. And I think that's probably the major difference people are hoping with Mike Brown that he more fits the team, and that translates to more wins and a team that can finally get it done.
This is why it's hard to build a championship team in New York because if you're a GM and you're there for a while and you have a couple disappointing seasons, guys want you fired. They want you to make changes, and I think it's important to not be driven to make changes because of the pressure of a fan base all the time.
Yeah.
And I thought, I actually was very pro what Leon Rose was doing before he made that Mikal Bridges trade. He wasn't making the trade for DeMar DeRozan. He wasn't making the trade for Zach LaVine. He wasn't making the trade for Donovan Mitchell. He wasn't giving, even though I thought that probably would have been a better move than Mikal Bridges. You know what I mean, though? Like he didn't. He was waiting, and that's what I thought he was gonna do with, say,
Hmm.
Giannis became available and pounced. Obviously, he felt pressure to do something, and then he made a move, and now they're all in, right? And now, if they even somehow get Giannis at this point, they're really all in because then at that point, the team is just three players and then a bunch of dudes, which I don't think is sustainable for winning.
Yeah,
So,
it'd be tough.
especially in today's NBA, I think 10
Yeah.
years ago, maybe, but not in today's NBA. So, And you see it in all around New York sports. The New York Giants, right? The GM and the coach, they wanted them fired last year, right? They draft the franchise quarterback this summer. This is why you can't give up on dudes so early, right? And
Mm,
a big reason, like I really wanted Tibbs to kind of see this all the way through. But when you make a trade for Mikal Bridges and Karl Anthony Towns, Towns played under Tibbs, right? Didn't really work out in Minnesota for whatever reason. Maybe it was a Jimmy Butler thing, although Tibbs was fired in Minnesota and Cat was still on the team, so I'm sure there was some say. And, Mikal Bridges didn't seem to like him either. So
yeah, for sure.
it's tough, but
And we'll see. And
we'll see what
luckily
happens.
we get to see it right away. Tomorrow the Cavs and the Knicks play each other.
Yep.
They'll be without Josh Hart most likely.
Yeah.
Um, we'll see if Mitch plays or not. I hope he does, just to see what it looks like. He
Yeah.
had a ball against Jared Allen and Evan Mobley a few years ago. Obviously, that's a few years ago. Um, but we'll get to see what this looks like. Um,
Why
I'm
aren't
ready
the
for
Knicks playing tonight? What a
um,
missed opportunity by the NBA. Like seriously, this is the team that most people have coming out of the East, I would say. I'm in the minority. Um, it's New York. Like what are we doing?
they
We have
chose they chose
we
four
have
four
four
Western
West
Conference,
Coast
yeah,
teams.
four
What are
Western
we
Conference
doing,
teams.
NBA? What are we doing? What are we doing, Adam Silver? Who's
Well,
trying to make a European
that
thing going on here?
that could
God,
that
what are
could be
we doing?
that could be a whole nother episode on Adam Silver and his decisions in the
The
NBA.
Yankees aren't in the World Series right now. Like, what are we doing? There's
Yeah,
not even an East. Well, Toronto. Like, you got a Canadian team in the World Series, right? And then there's no football on tonight. What are we doing?
yeah, it was weird. New team
Disgrace.
KD new in Houston. We could
Yeah,
talk
that
about
leads us
them.
to our next questions.
Yeah, we could talk about that.
I think we have different opinions on Houston right now.
We do. I think we do.
So go ahead, you say yours.
Uh I I can't help but really like this Houston team. And I think this is probably the best opportunity KD will have, probably the last opportunity as well, to prove that he can be the best player on a very good championship level team. And that's something that he hasn't been able to do since he left Golden State. And that's ultimately, I think, the thing that's been the reoccurring narrative about his career. You know, yes, he won those titles with Golden State, but we give a lot of that credit to Steph Curry and the culture. They kind of just plugged him in, and he was an excellent. Now he has the Finals MVPs for it because he was so good. But when we look at the Brooklyn tenure and how tumultuous it was, and obviously you saw it firsthand, everything and that happened with that team, Harden, Kyrie, and then he picks to go to Phoenix, and they go just a little too far once they trade for Bradley Beal, and it ends terribly. They didn't make the playoffs last year. Um, Now he's in this situation, right? Where like, all right, this is a great situation. You have a young Sengun, Amen Thompson, Ime Udoka, who has completely changed the culture there in Houston. Post Harden, they were really bad, and they've drafted some young players. Obviously, Jalen Green, they waited to see if he could make that step, make that leap, and he didn't. Now you have Kevin Durant, who, even at his advanced age, is still a very good, he's still a top 10 player. I think this is the best supporting cast he's had since Golden State, really, if you look at 1 through 10. Of course, he had the big three in Brooklyn, but you have a lot of young players, wings, offensive talent that can help make this team a real threat to the Oklahoma City Thunder. I know Oklahoma City was fantastic last year. There's really no reason to think they won't be fantastic this year. But of course, we've seen teams not go to finals consecutively. We're in this era where a new team makes the finals every year. So I think if you look at the Western Conference, I think a lot of people like Denver, and there's many reasons to like Denver. I think Houston is right there as the biggest threat to the Oklahoma City Thunder.
So I disagree. I think it's Denver, but I will say Houston on paper. I agree with most of the things you're saying. I think, and you're right to think this way. I just have questions. That's all. I just have questions.
Mm-hmm.
I don't necessarily. I think we're actually pretty much on the same page about this. It's just I just have some questions to think about
Go for it.
because On paper, this Rockets team is deep. They're big. They're extremely talented. They were the 2 seed last year, and they have one of the best coaches in the league. Who is the leader on this team?
That's a good question.
It's Kevin Durant.
It is Kevin Durant.
How has that gone for like half a
It
decade now?
notoriously has not gone well.
And that's with veteran players and veteran teams. This is a young team. Now, there's a lot of reasons it could work. Kevin Durant's never had this much defensive talent on his team. He's playing shooting guard.
Yeah, that starting lineup's
Like
insane.
that's, and I actually I'm interested and intrigued. I think that could work. I just don't know if he's quick enough to guard these shooting guards. I don't know if he's going to, but I
Yeah.
think it's interesting. And I obviously he's not going to close games there. He's going to, they're going to go a lot smaller. They got rid of the Jalen Green issue. They replaced Jalen Green with Kevin Durant. It was a no-brainer move for Houston. They didn't give
hmm
up anybody. Reed Shepard, didn't really get an opportunity all last year. He's going to get opportunities this year with Fred VanVleet being hurt.
hmm
Although Fred VanVleet was a leader on the team, I think, and now you could cross that off.
Well, he'll be there in spirit on the
Yeah,
sideline
yeah, he'll be
until
there in
he
spirit
gets
on the
healthy. Yeah.
sideline, but you need that floor general, I think, and you're asking a contender. Reed Shepard is going to probably is he starting?
No,
Who's starting?
they're starting everyone. Amen Thompson is going to be kind of their starting point guard
Yeah,
right now, and it's going to be
and I just
KD and then Jabari, Sengun, and Steven Adams are going to stay
that's a
with the double
2K
big.
team.
To do that against the
That's
defending
you're
champions
making.
is it's an interesting choice. I guess they're kind of pressed for it because the Fred VanVleet injury, and they're not going to throw Reed Shepard, who barely played last year, right
Yeah,
into the
I knew
mix
he wasn't going
starting.
to start. I'm just saying I think
Yeah,
the ideal hope is that he would be the guy that kind of proves that he can maybe do that. But
it's a
I just
lot to
think they
put
need a
on,
floor general
still a
and
rookies
some
in
spit.
some ways.
Yeah, exactly. So I just have questions. Plus, if Durant gets hurt, I guess it wouldn't be that big of a deal because like
They would look
they
similar
they
to
they
what they were last
yeah,
year, more
yeah,
or less.
yeah. So, he kind of puts them over the top, I guess, in that way. But I don't know, man. There's just those are questions I have, and in a tough Western Conference, if you have a few bad weeks, like
Th-
Houston didn't really have a few bad weeks last year. They were pretty consistent the entire season.
mhm.
As much as Durant going down, you have depth and you have a great coach to deal with that. He is the best player on this team. Like, so if he goes down, oh, you don't have your best player. You know what I mean? And
Yeah,
we've seen as listen, I've been consistent about this. Kevin Durant was the least to blame in the Brooklyn debacle. He gets a lot of it, but he was least to blame in my opinion. It was mostly Kyrie and Harden bailed. I mean, that's just what it was. I mean, you saw Durant in the Netflix series recently
yeah.
kind of be like, talk to Harden about it.
Ask him why.
Ask him why.
Ask him what
So
happened.
I
Yeah,
think KD gets a lot of, and then even Phoenix too. Like when he got to Phoenix, Aiton, Durant, Chris Paul, Booker made sense. Then they traded for Bradley Beal. Doesn't make sense. Like
yeah.
poor roster construction. Part of that is on him too. This Houston team doesn't have that issue. They don't have an issue with roster construction, I think, even though I think that they're lacking in point guard play. Hilarious that he's in Phoenix. They don't have a point guard. Goes
And
to
now he's in
Houston.
Houston. They
They
don't
don't
have
have a
a
point
point
guard.
guard.
But they do have an elite coach in Ime Udoka who has experience with Kevin Durant, has had success with Kevin Durant in Brooklyn that first year. So they're probably fine. It's just I think there's questions. And I think when you have a deep Western Conference, you're going to have the Lakers, you're going to have the Clippers, right? You're going to have Denver, name them.
Yeah.
This is a really deep, you know, this is a deep conference. I mean, you have bad teams with talent. Like Sacramento's a bad team.
But
They have
you
like
still have DeMar
good
DeRozan and Zach
players.
LaVine. Yeah, you
Like
still have
there's just
offensive. Yeah,
even like Utah, right? I mean, like, have you seen Ace Bailey so far? He looks pretty filthy. Like
Utah's
they have
losing on
Laurie
purpose.
Markkinen.
I've,
They
I've,
Will Hardy, I like.
yeah, I've told
So
people I'm like Utah has. I mean, Colin Sexton's gone, but they have a
Yeah.
lot of young talent. Keontae George is great
Yeah.
as a young player. They have talent. Lauri Markkanen's really good. They're
San
just
Antonio may not make the playoffs.
yeah. I think they get in there at the
I do
bottom,
too,
uh,
but
but yeah,
they
with
may not make the playoffs.
yeah, I mean not.
And they have Victor Wembanyama.
It's an insane conference.
So,
Yeah,
you know, it's really interesting because I just as much as I like Kevin Durant's game and you just can't ignore that he's also just like the king of unhappy teams. He just is. The teams look miserable the longer he's there. And it sucks, but it's just something you can't ignore. And I don't think that's 100%. I will say though, I think part of the reason that's the case is because he's kind of the only guy on the team. Not the only guy, but like those teams don't usually have a lot of depth or defense. And it's clear you Kevin Durant talked about it recently when talking about championship teams. It's like he clearly does not value defense as much as
he doesn't.
other teams.
Yeah,
So this Houston team's not going to have a defensive issue. And
well,
that's
you should.
why it's a good idea that Kevin Durant does not run basketball teams because when he puts his foot down on teams, it really goes badly. And yeah,
Yeah, I think just the notion that this team with no functional off. I mean, they were terrible offensively against Golden State in the playoffs, and they forced Game 7. They almost came back down 3-1 against a Warriors team with Steph Curry, Jimmy Butler, and company. You take that defensive identity. They were fourth in defensive efficiency last year. They won 52 games as Jalen Green and Sengun being as their best offensive players. I think just naturally you swap out Jalen Green for Kevin Durant. As long as Kevin Durant can maybe play 70 games, 70, and that's a high ask these days for the injury history that he has. Basically every year since the Achilles, he's get something.
yeah,
But as you mentioned, this team is built to withstand that. And I know that they have the injuries for Van Vliet. Dorian Finney-Smith also is not going to be ready to play. But I think this team is deep enough. They have a lot of young talent. Tari Eason off the bench, Jabari Smith Jr. They have a lot of talent. I think all he has to do is score
yeah.
and be Kevin Durant.
They also could have an issue. You know, they got rid of Cam Whitmore and stuff. He was a talented guy that was barely playing. They
Yeah.
might have a too many guys problem too.
That I think people were saying that. Like there's a lot of guys on this team that you like Clint, they
And they're
brought
all
back
like
Clint
the
Capella as well.
same. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And they're all like on the same level of like where each guy may think I'm better than this dude. You know, that and that could lead to problems.
Speaking of, I think they
Yeah.
didn't yesterday was the extension for the deadline for rookie extensions. They did not extend Tari Eason. So he will become a free agent, I believe,
Yeah.
at the end of this season or the end of next season.
Which is complicated now with free agency, guys not getting paid, cap space out there. So yeah.